made it to episode 29 of the Interstice podcast, and today I'm joined by an interesting person who I really appreciate you coming on, Joseph, because I know that we're not exactly talking about the lightest things today, and I know that that's, in some sense, it's just like making yourself vulnerable, and I think that that's one of the most difficult things to do, and I think that it's possibly what people will gain the most from. So it's not the easiest thing in the world, but by way of an introduction, like, what's your interest in Japan? What's your kind of like, what's your general trajectory in life?
Well, my main interest in Japan is like the language and the history of it, also the culture.
I see.
And just everything about Japan really sticks out to me. And plus, I like anime too.
Classic choices. Absolutely classic choices. The
plus
language is good.
Oh, yes. And I'm trying to learn the language and even writing the language so I can one day move to Japan and even stay there for the rest of my life.
Are you, when you say that you're studying, how it's just interesting to me, because had I not got home so late this evening, I would have I want to start studying. I'm going to take the JLPT again here in December. How are you studying?
Like reading pages in Japanese, also writing things down.
Okay. Do you use any grammatical books as of yet?
No. Like I'm doing it all on my own. Like I'm trying to be self-taught. I have a few stepsisters that taught me a few words. So
but you could still be self-taught and use grammatical books, right? Because it's you who's doing the learning. You're not in a class or anything. You're just like teaching yourself as you read.
Okay.
Yeah, if you are really interested in that, like I would probably recommend to anyone who's watching this, a really good place to start is Mina no Nihongo, and there's book 1 and 2, and they're like just incredible beginner books for you to get off the ground, start to comprehend like the most basic grammar, like this, he, she, like all the fundamental vocabulary as well, which can be really useful.
Oh, I agree with that.
So beyond the language, you came on here. I had asked Joseph to like give me a list of things that we might talk about, and a couple really stood out to me. One among them was like, I think it's really good. We can always use an inspiring tale, and kind of also commiserating, knowing that there's like shared difficulty in everybody's life. I mean, I've had a number of people who say when they listen to things I talk about in the podcast, they like it because it reminds them that they're not the only ones who have a shitty day, and that can be useful for us to get up and face it all again. So like what's one of the topics you had said is like getting over like a really difficult thing. What was something really difficult in recent memory or in your history that you've overcome?
Well, I was abused in my childhood. And my mother's second husband, I do not call him my first stepfather. I would never acknowledge him as such. He's just the father of my half sister.
I see.
So yeah.
So like a kind of like physical abuse then.
Emotional and mental too.
Okay, I understand that. It's maybe it's almost cliche at this point to say, but I think that's like, obviously it's underrepresented because that's something that people just don't see, right? And when seeing is believing for so many, so if you say that was your mother's second husband, so was that always the way it was, or did the relationship develop into that, and how old were you?
Well, my mom, she met him while she was still married to my dad, just separated.
Mm-hmm.
And he got jealous over an 18-month-old just getting lots of attention from my mom. And he got all offended, and he hated me ever since. kind of stupid if you ask me.
Yeah, no doubt of that. When you say, so you were at the time you were 18 months old?
Yes.
Okay, and so you're saying kind of like as a baby,
Yeah.
you met him like pre-awareness, I guess you could say. And
Yeah.
but that is something, you know, I mean it's this is in no way condoning, but it's at least understanding, and you know, we can get into how the relationship developed, but I do understand how a lot of people get into relationships, and whether it's like a longer relationship, say for example, it's one where it was your first wife or your first husband, and a big thing happens when you have children, that goes without saying, but then the way that affection can shift in a relationship, and I think that's something that people are probably pretty frightened to talk about as well, because they don't want to acknowledge the fact that you could suddenly start paying more attention, a disproportionate amount, to your children, or, you know, where I think that there's kind of horrible things you could do on either side, like you described, that you would become jealous of the child in a way that's not fair.
Yes.
So you say, like, so obviously you feel that that was the case. You weren't even aware. So is that like an eternal memory? Like as long as you were aware that you were like mistreated by him?
Well, the earliest memory that I can have that I can really remember is when I was living in a apartment in California, in the United States. Like he
Mm-hmm.
kept on hitting me and hitting me,
And how old were
and
you?
I was around 3 years old to 4,
Wow.
and he was also abusing my mom too. So
It's incredible, like the impact that must have had, for the fact that like it's difficult to remember things from our past, let alone when we were 3 years old. Do you remember the circumstances?
no, all I really remember was just me getting hit every day. So
I see. Do you and does like the physical pain of it stay with you?
no, like the physical pain, no, I don't have any scarring, nothing.
But
The
do you
only
remember the pain?
oh yes, definitely,
I see.
definitely.
So if you were
Like
3 years old and he was doing that, like when, so yeah, like tell the story then. Did this continue to what age did it continue? Like, was there a point that you found where you were able to defend yourself or to defend your mom, or like what how
um
did this all evolve?
well, when I was around 7 years old, my mom decided to finally build up the courage to go to a domestic housing area, like a secret house.
Okay.
And I was in school when the was it vice principal or something
Mm-hmm.
came to get me. I was like in fourth period or something, and my vice principal was telling me that I'm no longer a student in the school. I somehow had enough credits to graduate early or something, but and I was still to this day I'm still surprised, but my mom, she went to a house along with me and my half sister, and we just lived there for a few months, and then we went to California to be with my grandparents for a few months. So
So for the fact that you guys had to live in that house, was that because this guy was enough of a threat that your mother couldn't say, "Look, I'm done with you"? Like, was there then threat of like greater
yes,
violence? Yeah.
threat of greater violence and harm to my life. So
Hmm.
that's what I learned anyway.
Did you mention a sister,
Half sister, yes,
a half sister born
from her.
from this second husband?
Yes,
I see. I see. And was he abusive towards her?
Not that I can really remember. From what I was told, that my sister was also getting abused by him, but now since my sister is a adult, he doesn't do anything anymore.
I see.
But me and my sister, we don't talk anymore.
Okay.
So I don't know why. She just blocked me on Facebook for no reason. So
yeah, it's hard. I would never state definitively, not knowing enough about the situation, but I mean certainly when there's been that kind of experience that you guys have had together, I would think there's got to be like some weird psychological garbage. I mean, it could even be, and I say, like, I would never say definitively, but like speculatively, it could just be like guilt. It can be like when she looks at you, it's like a reminder of what she could have misperceived as her own failings, you know, because she has this association more direct than yourself to this guy who has caused so much harm. That's only me offering an idea, like where it's so complex. I mean, obviously, it's another shame that you guys wouldn't be able to, as like having gone through that together, to form some sort of like emotional foundation to recover. So that's a shame. But so that was, how old were you when you did that, when you moved to your grandmother's? You were 7, did you say?
To my grandparents, yes.
Sorry, grandparents. Yep. I see.
And after that, like, my grandpa from my mom's side decided that it would be best for me to live with my dad, my real dad. So
okay, so what happened? So when you was your split, your mother's original split from your genetic father, was it on better terms? Like, what is your relationship with him?
Like now?
Well, let's talk the story through. How did it develop? Like, what was it like then? What is it now? What is it all?
Well, at first, me and my dad, we didn't really have the best relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, he was there, but not really there. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, my grandpa was the father figure of my life at the time.
And he was a good one. You respect your...
Oh yes. Like if he were still alive, I would be asking him for advice on anything, but unfortunately I can't.
I see. Not to paint too many silver linings here, but I mean, that is a fascinating relationship to have. I don't know. I think you probably, maybe people will, you know, chime in the comments here, but I think to have like a much, much closer relationship with a grandparent is something that's very, very rare. So that's something that you kind of uniquely have as a characteristic in your life.
Yes.
And so, okay, so he was there, not there, at those initial stages. Like you say, if you were to have like a more of like a male role model, it's your grandfather, and that's like good for him. I mean, that really speaks to because if you can trace that this is in your history, that's truly a part of yourself. Maybe that's like really good that you can, at least with some male model, like identify with, like a good man.
I agree. Yes.
So like why was he good? Why was your grandfather, why was he a great man? Because I mean, you said that quite, you were strong. You were like forceful when you said that. You were like, yes, I would still go to him. Like, what kind of man was he?
My grandfather, he used to be like such an honorable man. Like he can take care of other people without getting paid. He was one of those type of people that, like, if you needed help, that he would give it regardless of what you think. Like, my grandpa, he was my favorite person. Still is, in fact. But
what were some of his interests when he wasn't, you know, being so virtuous and helping people, like you say? Like, what were things that he did that made him happy?
Oh, I was hoping you'd ask that. Like my grandpa called himself the Italian cowboy. Like he loved anything cowboy wise, like John Wayne. He even dressed up as a cowboy on occasion.
Well,
Man.
if you got the heart and soul of it, perhaps you are. You
Oh
know.
yes, yes, and he even bought me a Halloween costume as a sheriff.
Okay, that's cool.
Oh man, like my I was my grandpa's favorite grandchild. He has 4 grandchildren.
I see.
So, and I was his favorite. Like we just connected. And he was also my main protector too. So yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like you had a fantastic relationship. So, how long did you live with your grandparents for?
Well, pardon. I mainly lived with my grandparents so I could get away from my mother's second husband.
Yes. Yes.
Like, but my mom, she still needed to take me in every every month or so. But I mainly lived with my grandparents.
When you say take you in, could you fill that in? What and take you in
Like,
where?
because like my mom had legal custody over me,
Yes.
so she had to let me live with her for a few weeks. I then I go live with my grandparents.
I see. So when you say take you in, you mean take you in to live in her home.
Yeah, with
Okay.
her. Yeah.
Because I had the impression, I thought for a moment about. I thought there was a chance that you had lived with your mom, with your grandparents, but she was not there.
Yes.
I see. And how is your relationship with your mom?
Well, it used to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was like the other topic that I suggested for
Mm-hmm.
this. Me and my mom, we used to be best friends. Like we used to be very close, but not anymore. Like I blocked my mom out of my life a year ago.
I see.
So
For anything specifically that she'd done, or is kind of like an act of like self-defense, like a sort of turtling thing, like what
no,
was what's the
some,
provocation?
something that she done. She lied about my sister being dead. In
Wow.
reality, that she isn't.
Your
Then
half sister?
yes,
I see.
and then 5 months later, so current time, like 7 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
um, that she lied about me having the coronavirus and was on a ventilator in the hospital.
You were?
Yeah, supposedly. But guess what? I never was.
Had she told someone else that?
Yes, she told her friends and some of my mom's side of the family.
I see.
And like how I learned that because my mom's ex best friend,
Mm-hmm.
she told me all that.
I see. And
And
mm-hmm.
and just last month, that my mom claimed that she was in a car accident. She wasn't. I had my dad call 3 local hospitals since he moved to Idaho, and that's where the supposed accident was. And my dad says that all the hospitals say that she wasn't there.
I see. And what I mean, maybe this is a moot point. Maybe sometimes the reason that people lie is so distant from reality that it's hard to see there being any sense in it. But you said that she also lied about your sister having been dead. What was did you see any reason in that? Why would she tell that lie?
like my mom, she's mentally unstable.
I
Like
see.
what I learned that my great aunt, my grandpa's sister,
Mm-hmm.
said that my mom, she always did have a has a mental problem,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a problem child.
I see. So
So
some sort of mental illness has
yes,
been a part of her life since, I mean, you know, you could say without obviously they weren't a doctor, but they were, you know, looking at your mom, and she was that way even since she was a child.
yes, and my mom, she was raised in a good environment. She was raised in a loving household, a loving family, but like my grandpa, he was embarrassed sometimes. My grandma, oh, she was extremely embarrassed.
I mean, it goes to show, like, there's all sorts of there's great reliable scientific studies that would show that the environment so impacts this sort of neurological development of somebody, but there can be neurological issues that aren't simply a course of, you know, watering the flower and treating them right and so on. It's that there's some the wiring's messed up, you know, like that does happen to people. um and I mean, it's why I hope that we get better at like individual care of people, because obviously, I mean, I don't think anybody's just born evil. I think that people are born with mental illnesses, though, and those need to be addressed, or like what has happened to you happens to you. Um, I was,
Like,
go ahead.
I do have a mental disability. I have autism. So,
Okay.
and like, just gonna put it out there, like, high functioning autism and low functioning autism, there's is two different things for anyone who doesn't know. Like, high functioning autism is like when like people like myself can actually still talk, but we still have
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of uh, um, have problems speaking. In my case, I can't understand big words. So, and low functioning autism is like you can barely talk unless if it's like a one word or two,
Mm-hmm.
and you have lots of like um, loud noises and stuff. So, so
It,
yeah, just wanted to give it out there.
yeah, yeah. Well, and this is crazy that you say this now at this exact moment. I'm glad I gave you. You know, I want to make sure that I'm creating a two-way street here for the conversation. But
Yes.
I was just reading an article recently that specifically was about the way that men and women's brains develop differently, that allows women with more severe cases of autism to mask it more easily than men. And so they can enter into almost like more compromising situations because the world perceives them as though they weren't having some additional challenge to their behavior. And
Like
go ahead.
uh, about that, like my dad, he said that I am very good at masking my autism,
Hmm.
and I actually agree with that. Like a lot of people, they don't know that I have autism because I speak so well,
Yeah, you do.
and
You do.
people are generally shocked that when I say, "Oh, I have autism," like they are genuinely shocked, and I get that a lot.
So when I have heard about autism, like what I've read in books is that it sounds kind of goofy, like what I've read in books, but it's true. It's what I've read in books. To not even discuss like how it manifests itself, but like what it is caused by, is that usually in everyone as we get older, you have a sensory input. You could think of it almost like a tap, and this is basically turned on and off to control the flow of our sensory input. And what is happening to people who are suffering from autism is that what controls this flow of sensory input, there's something that's gone wrong. And so it's often left too wide open. And so it leads to our senses, or someone suffering in your case, like a sensory overload. That would be the best way to put it. Like you mentioned earlier, like some people who have a sensitivity to loud noises. And when I've heard of other description of it, people who have a sensitivity to touch, like that's why all of these things set off a sort of like autistic antisocial behavior, is because it feels like such an overwhelming sensory sensation. But I'd love if you understand any better, or just to speak, like what does it feel like for you to experience autism? Like, what is that like?
Man, it's not good.
Yeah, fair enough.
In my experience, anyway. Like,
yeah.
I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know I can't do anything about it. I just live with it. I just hate it.
Well, how does you said like you had difficulty with some vocabulary? Like what is another challenge that it gives to you?
Like trying to get further education, because I graduated with a special high school diploma, and
right,
like in regular universities and colleges, that's not acceptable. So I would need to get a GED.
Yeah.
And like that really downplays me very much.
So it immediately puts like an educational glass ceiling on you.
Yes. And I hate that.
Yeah, man, I hate that feeling too. Or I hate the feeling of glass ceilings. That's something I would never, I'm never hoping to say empathize directly. Your situation is more challenging than anything I ever dealt with, but I do respect that. I do understand that kind of thing. What then are what are things that you can do? Like, what do you do to overcome it? Because obviously, like, you're still eloquent. You're still like, you're, for someone, like, the first thing I think of when I think of autism is somebody who is naturally, they're not naturally, they're just unable to carry on socially. Like, they become almost completely antisocial.
That is half true. Only half true.
Okay.
Like, there's a lot of autistic people out there, like, who are like me, who can verbalize very well, who can actually excel in a lot of things. Like, there's even autistic college professors or something, and they do well.
Wow, I had no idea. That is,
like,
that's wild.
People with autism are actually on certain things near or even above genius level.
So sort of like a savant, like other parts of yourself have suffered, but then this part is extremely strong.
That's called autism savant. Like, for me,
I see.
For me, I am even better than expert of family history, regular history.
You mentioned that was another detail. Okay, so that's cool. So with that, I'll say what we'll do is we're going to head into the second half, and we'll get into this family history thing that you mentioned. And I want to take this time now too to remind people that if you want to get your questions answered, perhaps even as Joseph has done, if you want to come on the podcast and you have an interesting story, don't hesitate to get a hold of me. So let's get into the second half of the podcast. Maybe we'll even do a couple emails here and get Joseph's opinion on that as well.
Alrighty.
All right, so we had talked about family history, and that was like a particular interest you had, but I didn't want to be lost in the shuffle. A point, you just brought it up there in the intermission. You were talking about how you've not become bitter, and that you kind of call it like retained your humanity through this. And I was wondering, like, so you've dealt with abuse, you've had to deal with the challenge of autism. Like, what are ways that you overcome that in your experience?
Well, with the autism part, I take medication.
Okay.
Like very low dosage, but I mainly do it by willpower.
I see. I see.
So,
what is it that the medication is helping you do?
well, my autism medication that actually helps me by just remaining calm, just feel chilled out.
Okay.
So,
I see.
that's like 1 milligram.
Oh wow, that is significantly low dosage.
Yeah.
What do I mean, it's obviously not a autism medication, but like back when I was in Canada, I had a really, really brutal experience emotionally with like a relationship that ended after 3 years. And I couldn't sleep after that. And so I was taking, what the hell is it called? It's like basically this like naturally occurring neurotransmitter, but it's not metformin. That's this like other stuff. It's like an anti-aging thing. Anyways, all it took was like 5 milligrams of that, and I think 5 milligrams is a pretty low dose. But it allowed me to sleep, and sleep is so important for mental recovery. But okay, so it chills you out, and lets you like stay a little bit calmer. But you say mostly by willpower. Is so could it be that you would take? Would you take? Do some people take more than you are taking? Is this like an unusual amount that you take?
No, not really.
Okay, I see. Well, what about then the to be physically abused, that kind of violence? I mean, I know that does stuff to our brains, and you're already dealing with these other challenges. Like, how did you deal with that as time has gone on? Is it just sort of like well, you just have to because life carries on, or like is that something that you've particularly made a point of the way that you are now to deal with that?
Well, like the only thing I can really say is that it gave me a lesson that I should never do that to anyone, especially my own children, and that you should never abuse anyone, no matter what.
That's a good answer,
abuse, man. Any abuse, frankly.
That's it's a very powerful answer. Because I mean, perhaps it's the most important lesson. I mean, the whole thing, if you don't learn what you've learned, if you don't take from it what you've taken from it, then that's what perpetuates it, right? It's like if it's not that people end up abusing drugs or end up homeless, like people who are abused abuse other people. It's just the like, that's the sick cycle. And so with you saying that, then it means that you've broken the cycle, and it's given you that depth of character, right? Like you could maybe put it this way. It's like, well, yeah, it's one thing to say like we should not abuse people, and that seems like you would take it for granted. That's clear, right? Like we shouldn't do that to each other. But there is a totally different experience of having been through that pain and then knowing it to that depth that you're like, no, it's not. I don't just say this because it seems practical. I say this because I know what it's like.
Yes.
No, that's really good. I mean, I think that actually it speaks to a lot of these things, like where people like yourself have really challenging things. Say somebody really nobody knows better why you shouldn't be bullied than somebody who was bullied. Like nobody knows better that you shouldn't be abusive in whatever form that it can take if you've experienced that abuse yourself, if you can resist the temptation to then become like that kind of thing.
For me, I don't get the logic behind hitting someone. Like, unless if it's for self-defense only. Other than that, I don't get why you can assault someone, abuse someone. I just don't get it. Like, what's the purpose in that? Just to to fulfill your own satisfaction in bringing another human being down. Like, come on, it's not worth it.
I completely agree. I think it's not worth it. But again, understanding without condoning, I think people do that because it's a release. When you hit someone, like what is anger if not an emotional release? And then what is not the ultimate emotional release of anger than to put someone in physical pain? It's a kind of release that people get from it. It's like it's the most unhealthy release in the world when it's done through anger. It's like mischanneled aggression. But I do think that is why, kind of in a misdirected way, that people do it. And it's not only that it's an emotional release when people do this, but I think it is as well that it is a act of control. So many times we're angry because we feel things have passed out of our power. Take, for example, and I mean, this is the crazy thing, because it's like in no way as I talk through this, am I ever condoning this? But this person who was jealous of you as a child, when you were 18 months old, that's what you said, right? 18 months old?
Yes. Yes.
So for him, although any rational person could see you're not taking back control, you're losing control when you hurt this child. But for him, even if it's not at the forefront of his mind, I'm also not saying that people are necessarily doing these things like, I will take back control. But it is an act of control, isn't it? It's an act of dominance that is asserting, if anything, power over people. So I think it's power. I think it's control, whether we're conscious or subconsciously aware of that or not. And it is emotional release that we do these things for. But I feel like in understanding that, that's another way that we can help people with these problems. Like, I'm not talking, it's a whole different set of things if you're helping somebody who's like a child abuser. But like people who suffer from rage, like you can look at a lot of people and you just say to them, oh, well, that guy's a rageaholic, there's nothing to it. But it could be something underlying that. It's this, like, that, have you looked at how this person's been disempowered in their life? Like, is there ways that you could fix it? Because a lot of people, I think, they look at something like a characteristic like that and they think that that's set in stone, when I think that no, people are the summation of their experience. And as opposed to just seeing people in black and white, if we understood just the complexities of our lives and how that gives rise to the good and the bad, you could send somebody on a different course. You know, like, not to say that I'm addicted to it, but I like paths of redemption. I like knowing that people could redeem themselves. But that's a little bit, that's more me kind of musing on the, like you had said, you don't get it. What I think that can be, without repeatedly to say, without condoning, that could be a way that we could better understand it. But have you ever seen any other experiences, because through your experience, where you've ever felt like you needed to intercede, where you're like, I should do something. This person is being abusive. I know how bad that is, and I'm going to speak up because of what I've been through?
Well, before I blocked out my mom out of my life, she was getting abused by her idiot fiance, who I still want to harm, but I'm not gonna do that.
Is this her third? This is following the relationship that was abusive to you?
Yes, like several years later.
I see. Okay.
Several. Like, my mom, she was engaged to this idiot. Like, after her third husband died, like, who I do acknowledge as my stepfather, because he loved me like as if I'm his own son. So
really,
anyway, like, yes.
So to be clear, just so I have the chain of events, following the abusive husband, she remarried again and to a good man?
Yes.
I see.
She was married with him to him for about 5 years, but she met him while being married to her second husband. She was having an affair with him.
I see.
And that and when they finally got divorced in 2005 or 6,
Mm-hmm.
She went to live with them, and they've been happy ever since until my stepfather died in 2015.
How did he die? How did he pass away?
Uh, two different kinds of cancers. He was a hardcore smoker and drinker.
Okay. I see.
But he was a nice guy. He was never abusive towards my mom. Nothing.
Yeah.
The only downside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The only downside about him is like he was an alcoholic.
Okay. Okay. It's a very storied experience of men that your mother's been with. But I mean, to be fair, I mean, this is you've raised like another point, right? It shows how vice isn't always what makes somebody good or bad, because I mean, like, it's like a tired, old cliche that somebody would be an alcoholic and abusive, but here this guy he's an alcoholic, but you say he was like actually a really good guy.
Yes.
I see. What kind of like relationship did you have with him? Just sort of like, hey, how you doing? Like, you're older at this point, obviously. That's like not so long ago.
Well, like, I had a good relationship with them. He treated me right. I treated him right. He respected me.
Mm-hmm.
I respected him.
Mm-hmm.
And he made my mom happy, and that's all I really want. It's just my mom be happy in a safe relationship, and that she also makes him happy too. No
Mm-hmm.
abusive crap or anything like that. That's all I really want.
I see. So, I mean, now you've definitely, I suppose this is another thing, given relationships, you've seen so many, and you've seen a lot of bad ones. You've seen a lot of that. Do you, I feel like you must, in your own personal life, do you feel that it must be heavily impacted by all this stuff you've been through?
Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense. It only makes sense. So you had mentioned, I think, in a little bit of our correspondence, you talked about like remaining neutral. Like, what did you mean about that?
Well, like what I mean about that is like being neutral in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't take one side and you don't take the other. Like you're always in the middle. You always listen to one story and you always listen to another one. Like the only side that you take is yours. Because I don't like taking sides on anything. So, like, for me, being neutral in life is the best thing you can do. Like, you try your best not to be involved in drama or anything like that.
So would it be fair to say you're basically trying to listen to everybody? You're not just like jumping to a conclusion.
Yes.
I see.
Like if you know me personally, I'm one of the most neutral persons you could ever meet. Like if one of my friends wants to hang out and wants to go to McDonald's or something, like I'm like, it's food, so let's see what I'm in the mood for. So, or if someone wants to go to SeaWorld or Universal or Disney, I'm like, okay, whatever. If they want to go on a ride, then I go.
Okay.
So
you're fairly go with the flow then? Could we use that expression?
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So neutral, then it sounds like to me it's almost more than, it's not only neutral in taking sides, it's neutral in the way in which you make decisions as well. That you don't feel like heavily weighted to do some particular thing or another.
Yes.
Okay. And what do you like? I could see how it has the benefit when you're talking about listening to a difference of opinion with like different people that you're talking to, but I'm wondering, how do you like I might infer some reasons why that's useful, but like why do you see it as working well for going with the flow of like suggestions on what to do in your life? Like why do you see that as a good thing there?
Well, I just do it. Like if there's a suggestion that I do actually help someone, then that's good for them. Basically.
You know what, I actually, it's kind of cool. I have you saying that you're like this. I really do appreciate, like, I'm probably of the more forceful personalities that you might find. Like, I like to do things and I like to know what I'm doing and I'll have an opinion about what I'm doing. But what I've come to really respect is I got this friend. He's been in a few, he's actually been on the podcast before. His name's Graham. And I've noticed in his character that he's kind of similar to yourself, that he's easygoing and neutral. And if somebody brings something up or suggests something, he'll just do it. He'll do it on a dime, or he won't usually feel like a strong aversion to almost anything. He'll just do it. And what I found when I've looked at his behavior for a guy who doesn't seem like he's actively seeking out a lot of new experiences, because he's open to whatever anyone else is doing, it means that he ends up having a variety of experiences. Like if somebody wants to play tennis, he'll go play tennis. If somebody wants to go to the gym, he'll go to the gym. And where you'd think that the people experiencing the most things are those who seek them out, he's actually given me an example of a personality type that in a way is allowing them to come to him in his openness. That you want to go here, I'll go here. You want to do that, I'll do that. And it was just in the way that you've described, it's like a different way for me to see how you could accomplish something similarly, and probably with better stress level, because you're not always grinding all the time in terms of like, I need to do this, I need to do that. So I'm kind of curious how, when you said, like, we were talking about a polarization of skill, like you could have the autistic savant, and that might mean that they do this one thing very well. And you had said that you do family history very well. I was curious, like, what does that mean? Are you just into it? Like you were able to focus on it very well, or what is it that makes you good at it?
Well, I can memorize relationships just in an instant. And I also know a lot about the individual themselves, on who I'm related to.
I see.
Like, for example, John Caldwell Calhoun, he was a vice president of the United States under my seventh president, Andrew Jackson.
Okay, some detail there. That's cool.
Yes. He's my first cousin 8 times removed.
Okay, that's wild. Okay.
And for anyone who doesn't know what the times removed means, it means by generation. So me and John, we're still first cousins. Just 8 generations separate us.
Man, that's you've gone into a serious history there.
Yes.
That's cool. Like, I was saying this just on one of these other podcasts, I was talking about how weird it is that we are so generationally disconnected, that how it shows how, like, we think we're so, like, open-minded and far-seeing and looking to our futures and really in life and a part of the stream. But most people, like we were talking about at the beginning of this, they don't even have a relationship, a real one, with their grandparents. And let alone, you probably couldn't name, like 90% of people couldn't name who their great-grandparents' name even was. And so I think that's really cool. I feel like it sets you in the whole flow of existence more to be connected to that. Is there like a website, or like how are you doing your research and authenticating what it is that you discover about this?
Ancestry.com.
Okay. And is it free? You got like a service to this thing?
It's technically it's free, but you need a subscription to use most services. But pardon. I'm technically a member of the Mormon Church.
You say technically. Okay.
Yes. Like, I'm a member only by record. I am a deist, meaning that I believe in a higher power, but basically I reject all religion and holy books.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. Like a lot of the founding
Yes.
fathers for America, they were deists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Interesting designation you've given yourself there.
Like the Mormon church, they actually offer um, they actually offer to pay your ancestry.com account if you're a member.
Okay.
And that's what I use. I use their subscription service and they pay for it.
Okay.
And I get every record that I can have.
What is so like that was one particularly interesting one that you cited. Is there another equally interesting branch in your family tree that you discovered as you did your research?
Well, through my grandma from my dad's side, I'm a direct descendant of King George III.
Whoa.
Yeah. The same man who lost America.
Okay.
So
I have.
And no.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you go first.
Oh no, I was going to say what I've done is I've opened up. I have a question here in one of the emails written to the podcast, so we can both
Sure.
weigh in on this, if you'd
All
like.
right.
Since I mean, I don't. There's no topping the fact that you are related to royalty. I don't think I have that. I do actually. I mean, to be completely fair, since we're in this, whoever has made it this far in the podcast, I think my grandmother on my mom's side was really into ancestry as well, believe it or not, and she told us like there was some like crazy intrigue that like there was apparently some guy in England and you know whatever royal court, and our family, this guy is related to the stable master. He was like the stable master of the royal court, and he had like an illicit affair with the queen, which I was like, oh, just a thief in the night. We're such rogues. But I've never really gone into more detail. But I'm curious, and I thought that it was interesting since you brought it up here. I was like, you know, this is indicating to me that I should take an even greater interest. So here's the question for us today, Joseph. We'll get you to weigh in on this as well, because I think there's huge elements in your life that actually are reflected in this question. So it says, this is from Karim. And he says, hey, Dave, I have more an introspective question for you. As you described before, it's hard to fit in as an outsider, whether it be in Japan or in another society setting. As an outsider, assumingly, with more time to yourself because of the societal position you're in, how has that helped you become a better version of yourself? Does it include more physical activity, reducing screen time, picking up a book? Life can get hard sometimes, and an idle mind doesn't help that. However, I'd argue it's how you use your time to improve yourself and keep busy that can be pivotal in the progression of ourself. Thanks for the content over the years. Be well. Thank you for your email, Karim. So I think it would be cool to have you weigh in there, like your thoughts and reflections, Joseph. Like, obviously, you've experienced as an outsider. I think this sort of like physical and mental strife you've been through, living day in and day out with like autism. How do you see that as? Can you see it as a strength for yourself, or do you feel like that's just like a happy story that people tell themselves when they go through difficult things?
To me, I don't find it as a strength nor a good thing. So I'm actually neutral on that too.
Okay.
I can also be neutral on topics. So
okay.
So yeah.
You feel that it's something that kind of has how it equally distributed in the spectrum of good and bad in your life, then the fact that you have these unique situations.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and well, to be completely honest, I think it's probably the most accurate thing that you could say about it, because you can't have one without the other. It's that idea, right? That like, sure, I've got this like great sense of how I should not, you know, I shouldn't abuse people, and I understand that in a unique way. But is it really worth the cost? Like that's the thing in life. Is it like, are these lessons that we learn it's almost like a question that you can't ask, really, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you get to ask that question. You can. So it's like, it's interesting. We as these super smart monkeys, we can ask questions, but in terms of how we apply it to our lives, we can't say that it was more or less worth it, because that would be like going back in time and saying to the person who's going through the abuse, don't worry, this will be worth it, which I don't think you could take. There's no moral position that exists in the world that says to an abused child that this will all work out as you go through that experience. So I think you to have weighted it in that way is it's very, very reasonable. I definitely know, without going too much, because I want to have the conversation with you, not my life, but I definitely, when I was younger, I was quite big, and you'd think that that would save you from people like bullying you, but actually, because I was big, it meant that I was sort of like I was the Colosseum. I was the thing that you went to if you wanted to prove that you could, that you could fight, that you were a tough guy because you could attack Jameson. And if you attack Jameson, that meant that you must be tough, because who goes and sticks a sword in the mountain? That's it's probably not going to work out well, but you got the balls to do it. But it also meant that people older than me were doing it. So then I think it's been great. I really enjoyed having you on here, Joseph. I appreciate you spending your time where Joseph lives. He's actually had to, what time did you have to set your alarm to?
5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. Like, we're really meeting at the other end of the time schedules here. For me, it's 10 in the evening. For you, it was 5 in the morning. So I really, really appreciate that. For everybody who was listening on iTunes or Spotify or just checking it out on the channel, thanks very much for tuning in. I appreciate you guys a lot. If you haven't already, please do consider supporting me on Patreon. That's how this kind of content comes about. And if, like yourself, you would got an interesting story and you'd like to share and maybe give some hope to other people in the world, and you'd like to come on the podcast, please do send me an email as well. But for now, the clock has run out, and I'll say a final thank you very much, Joseph, for coming on. I really appreciate the honest voice that you had today.
Thank you very much. And this is my first podcast, so glad to help.
Killing it, man. All right, cool. Clock has run out. Bye for now.